If you've played a Mario game at any point in your stupid life, then this is important. 2D Mario games have been slowly dying for over a decade. Whether you admit it or not, the new Super Mario Bros. Series has gotten boring, stale, and repetitive. It's like when your parents let you do breakfast for dinner. The first time you do it, you're like, oh my god, this is amazing, I've never done anything like it, and I can eat it on the couch too? Wow, Mom, you're the best. And the second time, you're like, wait, I can bring friends over now too? Fuck yeah, Mom, I'm 10 years old in this analogy. But after 17 years of this, your mom gets tired of making full American diner-style breakfasts, and your BFDs become a bowl of soggy Wheat Bix. I'm sorry, Australians, how does this exist? This is Great Depression food. And if you're really hungry, you can add shattered glass as a topping, because at least you'll feel something. Meanwhile, your friends have stopped coming over because their mom is letting them eat dino nuggets. Now imagine that for the first time in almost 20 years, your mom says, hey, let's order a rack of ribs. Super Mario Bros. Wonder. The first new Super Mario Bros. Game that isn't a new Super Mario Bros. Game. Yes, I did say that 3 months ago. Fuck you. I'm gonna skip all the filler and the history and the Super Mario Bros. Released and who gives a fuck to critical acclaim and just cut to the chase. This game is really fucking good. It's new, it's interesting, and it's beautiful. But most importantly, it solved every problem with the previous generation of 2D Mario games. This game single-handedly fixed 2D Mario. Quick, mild spoilers for Super Mario Wonder. This game made so many changes that it's almost impossible to notice all of them. The changes range from like slightly better use of background imagery to holy shit, the game is a top-down maze now. And that's the first thing that this game did different. It's that the game did things different. It's no secret that the new Super Mario Bros. Series played things incredibly safe and kept it very formulaic. More focused on pushing content out into the meat grinder than innovating and pushing the boundaries of the game. This is the first 2D Mario game to really play with the idea of what it means to be a 2D platformer. Sometimes going so far as to, again, make it not a 2D platformer. They finally realized that they're no longer making games for consoles with the processing power of a graphing calculator, and they've decided to run with that. Playing with aspects like perspective and being an elephant, which has never been done before because the Wii U couldn't process all the polygons of an elephant's vast knowledge. Now, I'm not saying that this is the first game to do those things, and I'm not even saying it's the best, but what I am saying is that it does it very effectively. For example, I think one of the hardest things to convey in Mario is a sense of scale, due to the simple fact that it has an overworld that scales Mario up and scales other things down. But there is a very simple but very effective moment at the beginning of the game that does this. When Bowser steals the seed and becomes a fucking castle, I expected him to do the easy thing and turn to the side and fly away. But instead he flies in towards the camera, which gives you a much realer sense of oppressive size than if the game just said, he's a fucking castle, and then threw him in the overworld. It also not only uses the foreground and background as set dressing, but also lets you play in those areas. I can't help but think of games like Kirby Planet Robobot. That game did it to take advantage of the 3D perspective on the 3DS, and not a ton of games have done things like this since that era, so I'm glad they brought it back. It's not something that's necessary, but I love how it fills out the world and plays with the parallax scrolling effect. Which, speaking of filling out levels, these levels are sick. Now, I do understand that this could be a place versus place Japan scenario, where it's not that the levels themselves have had a drastic change, but the entire game just looks better. But I really don't think that's the case. I think this game did a much better job of setting up interesting levels and encouraging players to explore them. And part of the reason that you feel like you can explore is because they removed the timer, which I think is the best change to a 2D Mario game ever made. Many previous 2D Mario games didn't emphasize that sense of, no pun intended, wonder that comes from exploring a new level, and instead focused on just being an obstacle course that you had to go through before you made it to the end. By removing the timer, it lets the player take their time and try weird stuff and find new things, and not constantly feel like they're being punished for it. And that feeling of not being punished for trying to enjoy and explore is built into the entirety of the game. Even when I was failing at something over and over, I never got to the fuck it, I quit point like I have in previous games. Remember, I'm the guy who got so mad at Luigi U that I punched a chunk out of my desk and had to play Bloodborne to calm down, which, on top of making the game way more enjoyable, also makes it more accessible. Of the 12 characters that are available to play, 5 of them are what I would consider little brother characters, which means that they can't get killed by enemies, but they also can't collect any power-ups. Nabbit was the first little brother character ever introduced, and for a while he was the only one, meaning that if you had 2 young children, at least one of them had to take the full brunt force of New Super Luigi U. But with this new setup, you could have up to 4, because the multiplayer locks out at 4, little brothers, and they could just play without you. This game is the easiest Super Mario Bros. Game to play with people who have either never played a Mario game before, or are just really bad at video games. Hello. One of the things that Wonder does introduce is a difficulty rating for every level, spanning from 1 to 4 stars. And they aren't dispersed 100% evenly, so it's not like, oh, well, this is is the 1-star area, and this is the 4-star area. There is a 4-star level in like the second section of the game. But the difference between this and other games is that you get to choose what levels you want to play and spend your time on. One of the most frustrating things about the previous games was that if you didn't like a level, there was no getting around it. You were stuck there until you beat it, which at a certain point would just get really annoying and suck the fun out of playing the game. It's a similar reason to why Elden Ring is more popular and accessible than other FromSoft titles like Dark Souls. In Elden Ring, if you are getting 1984 US election Walter Mondale swept by a boss, then you can just go do something else and that doesn't bog down the gameplay. Whereas in a more linear game like Dark Souls 3, if you're having trouble with a boss, you're pretty much stuck there until you beat it. So by letting you pick what levels you want to beat in Wonder, it keeps the game moving and keeps the gameplay engaging. And the way they do this is really fucking cool because they took a page out of 3D Mario's book, and instead of basing progression on if you beat a level, they introduced Wonder Seeds, which work like Power Stars, or really they work more like Power Moons. Most of the time, your progression is based on how many Wonder Seeds you've collected, with exceptions. There are some levels that are 100% required. In previous games, you just kind of follow a track and are forced to do levels because you need to hobbit walk your way to Mordor. But that has never seemed like a compelling reason to play these levels for me. But because of the seeds, at no point in this game did I ever ask, oh, well, why do I have to beat these levels anyways? Because progression is tied seamlessly to the story. You get Wonder Seeds in a few different ways, but the two main ones are saving poplins at the end of a level and finding Wonder Flowers. By offering both of these and giving them the same value, it encourages the player to try the wacky new shit that's been introduced for every level, because it literally has the same value as beating a level progression-wise. Which is why everyone's been talking about this game for months. The new wacky shit. Wonder Flowers change levels and how you play them in ways that you will never expect when you start a level. Every now and then the effects do repeat, but it's not frequent enough for you to be able to guess that it'll happen or what will happen. Because sometimes you think an effect is going to be the same, but really it's something that you never would have guessed. I'm not going to go too in depth on this because they are the biggest mystery that every level has to offer, and spoiling it kind of takes some of the intrigue out of the levels. But one of the biggest things that Wonder did was take inspiration from other 2D and 3D Mario games. The jump from Mario 3, playing as enemies from Mario Odyssey. These rifts are basically the exact same thing as dark matter in Mario Galaxy. And so many more that, again, I don't want to spoil because this game is so fucking cool. And somehow I've managed to get this far without talking about the new art style and character designs. Mario has always been a very bright colored series, and Wonder is obviously no exception. But Mario Wonder specifically puts more emphasis on pastel shades of blues, greens, and reds, giving the game an entirely unmistakable look. And for the first time in a while, all of the character designs have been completely overhauled. Mario now has these beautiful hand-drawn looking facial expressions that make him look just adorable and endearing. Every character now also cheats out towards the audience, so you can see about 3/4 of their faces at all times. It's a little theater thing that I thought was a very cool detail and made it much easier to view Mario as a character as opposed to just a vessel for the player. Along with this, the boss designs and colors have also seen updates. As I said, the entire game has a very bright pastel art style. And so to contrast this, Bowser's color palette resembles something almost punk, relying on dark blues, purples, and acid greens, which might imply that Mario's a fascist, but we will move past this. I particularly love the design of Wonder Bowser Jr. I like when games take advantage of the little hand-drawn mask that he wears, so the fact that Wonder gives him the literal jaws of death itself and makes him actually look intimidating makes total sense and is really cool. Also, this game got rid of the Koopalings, which thank God. Badges are also a new addition to Mario Wonder, and they make an incredible difference in how you approach and play levels. They range from things that make the game slightly easier, like saving you when you fall, to things like increased speed or a glider hat. It feels like the game is giving you the resources to explore and play the game. The parachute cap is like the first badge you get in the game, and it's what I used for pretty much the entire game because it's so versatile when it comes to platforming. It, again, factors into that idea of letting the player choose how they want to play. Also, Wonder finally lets you save normally as opposed to that quick save, beat a castle or tower bullshit from the previous games. Mario Wonder isn't just a breath of fresh air, it's a total revamp for the series that fixed almost every problem that the new series had. It's fun, well-paced, beautiful to look at, accessible, and the most creative Mario Brothers game ever made. Now subscribe and go watch this video about why Super Mario Brothers needed to change.